This is Mick Boone, Class 198 out of GLYNCO, Georgia, and you're listening to the Old Patrol HQ podcast. Honor first, honor always.
Greetings and welcome to episode 26 of the Old Patrol HQ podcast. I'm your host, Gil Maza. Today, we interview retired Old Patroller Mick Boone, Class 198 out of GLYNCO, Georgia. Mick tells us what his career was like in the Old Patrol and then his new venture into making one of the top 5 bourbons in the world, according to Forbes magazine, Boone's Bourbon. It made a bourbon drinker out of me. Come and take a listen. Good afternoon, Mick, and welcome to the Old Patrol HQ podcast.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here. Thank you for inviting me.
It's good to. I've been looking forward to this for a long time, and you've been playing hard to get, but you finally came around. I finally wore you out.
Yeah, we had some conflicts, and it's great that I was finally able to get this scheduled, and I was looking forward to it the whole time.
Yeah, well, I am looking forward to hearing your story from the time you got into the Border Patrol, until you retired, and then, of course, the Boone's Bourbon venture and how that's working out, which I know it's been fantastic. I am a proud investor in Boone's Bourbon, and we'll talk about it later, but you gave me my first taste of the best bourbon I ever had, and I can't drink anything else, but we'll get to that as we go. First of all, talk to us a little bit about how you got started in the patrol.
Yeah, it's kind of an interesting story. I had graduated from San Diego State. I had a minor in Spanish. And, my hobbies were, I'd like to go hunting and fishing and camping. And one day my dad hands me an application to the Border Patrol. He said, I think this is for you. You speak a little bit of Spanish, so it wouldn't be a real hard stretch for you. And you like the outdoors, so you should apply. And he said, we had a neighbor, our next door neighbor was Alan Kenrick, and he was a Border Patrol agent and really, really loved the patrol and said great things about it. So I applied, and I filled out, it was a long application. I filled it out and I never heard anything back. And then about 6 months later, I got a letter saying, go take the test. So I went and took the test. I passed the test and they said, okay, you're going to get an oral interview. And so got about 6 months or a year later, I get a notification to go over to Chula Vista and go get an interview. And that was crazy. Those guys, I swear their teeth were sharpened. And they were big, grizzly guys, and probably it wasn't like that at all, but they seemed to be ogres,
Yeah.
And they asked me all kinds of crazy questions, and what would I do here, and could I really shoot somebody, and all these crazy questions. And my final thing I think that put me over the top was they asked me, they had this scenario that it was a no-win situation, and in the end you had to shoot your way out. And they said, do you really think you could shoot somebody, and I said, well, I shot a deer before and it wasn't trying to kill me, so I think I could shoot somebody that was trying to kill me. And they all grinned and you passed. It was like another 6 months or a lot. It was a long time, and I'd kind of forgotten. And it was actually a month before I was to get married. I got a letter, and I had to report to El Paso, Texas, like 2 weeks after I got married.
Wow.
So I was a newlywed. I went to El Paso. From there, we went to the academy in Georgia, and the rest is I made a career out of it.
So you're a GLYNCO rock star.
I went through GLYNCO. We got there. Let's see. I EOD'd on July 6th, 1986, and a few days later we arrived in GLYNCO. Well, first we got off the tarmac in Jacksonville.
Yeah.
And had to take a bus to GLYNCO in Brunswick, and it was raining and steam was coming off the tarmac. And I was like, oh, this is not going to be fun.
That doesn't look good.
Our PT instructor was Dan Twynham, and he was training for the Boston Marathon. So we ran and ran and ran some more, man. It was crazy, but I got into good shape.
What class were you in?
198.
198. All right. And so you got through the academy okay. What did you struggle with most at the academy, do you think?
Law. Our law instructor was a detailed instructor. I don't think he'd ever taught it before.
Yeah.
So we weren't getting all the little tips and cheats and stuff that the other, Group A was killing us. They were just beating the tar out of us in every test. And we're like, how come you guys are doing so much better? Well, towards the end, and they knew they were going to win everything pretty much. They started giving us their study notes, and we're like, damn.
Jeez, made all the difference.
Yeah. We all started scoring in the 90s. We went from the 70s up to the 90s. So it just didn't seem like it didn't matter how much you studied the books. Remember all those law books and stuff?
Oh, yeah. Heck yeah.
I mean, we'd have a question and it would be right out of the law book, and you'd answer the question, and then it would be the wrong answer. And then you'd say, well, this is what the law book said. And the guy goes, yeah, those are outdated.
Yeah. Just like everything was by the time you got to your station, right?
Oh, yeah. Nothing was up to date back in those days, man. It was like 2 years behind.
I know you. It was one of the best experiences I ever had myself going over there. So you obviously graduate and you report to what duty station? What was your first duty station?
Station 1, El Paso, Texas. First night was midnight shift.
You got a bone to pick with Cliff Gill, right? Because he made the argument in his last post about history that El Paso's not Station 1 anymore, that actually there is no Station 1. So next time you see him, you can punch him in the face if you want.
Nah, that's okay. They changed the names. Everything's changed.
Yeah.
Nothing's lasts forever. So
that's true. But it'll still be Station 1 for you.
Yep. Yeah, that was a good duty station.
Okay, so let's talk about the environment. You walk into your very first muster, you're on the FTO program, right? How was the work when you got there? How was the environment?
Well, the first thing that happened is after muster, I get pulled aside by my supervisor. His name was Mike Huggins. And he says, no matter what happens out there, he said, you come and if anything bad happens, you come and tell me first. He said, I can write a memo and I can get you out anything.
Oh, wow.
So that was pretty cool. And it was midnight shift. And at the time, there were political issues between the U.S. and Mexico. And we were guarding the ports. So they were saying that they were going to burn down the ports. You know how that goes.
Yeah.
We were just standing watching. I had a riot stick, and I think they gave me some kind of old helmet or something, and like a plastic shield. And we were walking around like something was going to happen, and all the agents that have been there for a while were all chilling out, drinking coffee, the breeze, and all the trainees were like,
on high alert.
Yeah, we're on high alert, like waiting for something to happen. Nothing ever happened. It took us a couple of days, but we finally chilled out.
So what was the main, in other words, when you went through your initial field training, right, with the field training unit, what was the initial thrust? Was it sensors, sign cut? Was it, patrolling the freeways? What did you guys kind of get into while you were on the training unit?
Well, when we first got there, we had a little orientation. And then when we got back from the academy, we did have, when we had our training days, we had a training day once a week. They took us to the freight yards, and the freight yard guys, showed us how to get on and off the trains and stuff like that. But honestly, besides going to the post-academy training once a week, it was right out to the field. They assigned you to a journeyman.
Yeah.
And you just worked with them. They did whatever they wanted. And El Paso was pretty much wide open.
Yeah.
Tell you, okay, you're assigned to the to Bridge of the Americas area, and no telling where you would be. You could go anywhere you wanted. The guys just decided to do what they wanted to do. Some guys went where I don't know what we can say and not say on here is
you could say whatever you want. Okay. This is
so
wide open.
Some guys would go to where the wets were coming in, and others would go where they weren't.
Sounds about right.
Yeah, the supervisors were never on the line. Maybe there was an exception, one or two that would be there if you needed them.
Yeah.
But for the most part, you wouldn't see a supervisor unless you were processing or at the end of shift. And they came in an hour before us, so sometimes you wouldn't even see them at the end of the shift.
So what was the primary work you were doing out there? Was it cut and sign, or just intercepting bodies there on the border or the ports, or dope? What was the most of the work?
Well, there actually evening shift is when most of the cool stuff happened. The fights and the drugs coming in and all that. Day shift was when all the aliens came in. Midnight shift, you just kind of tried to stay awake, and then at like 6 or 7 in the morning, they'd all come running in, and
Of course.
you catch as many as you can. Most of this was all line watch in downtown El Paso.
Yeah.
Then I got put with a journeyman out in the Sandhills, and that was just sensor response. So we just I just watched him sleep and took the the 1018, 1019, all that kind of stuff, and all the security checks.
Yeah.
Until the sun started coming up, and then we'd shoot some jackrabbits and go to the pancake cottage and have coffee and breakfast and do our AUO. This was one particular guy. That was what he would do every day. And I remember I hadn't caught, the only thing I was doing, he would take me in to help process.
Yeah.
I could learn, get my name on some 213s and help out the other guys, but I hadn't caught any aliens. So one day I said, hey, I'm going to academy training, and all these guys got all these great, cool stories about the aliens are catching. And, you think we could catch some? And he goes, yeah, he goes, okay. So he takes me to a spot. He goes, you'll go underneath that overpass and stand behind a pillar. Pretty soon you'll hear somebody run up. You just jump out and grab them when they get up to you and bring them over to the truck. So, man, I'm there behind this pillar, and I hear this. This guy comes running up, and I jump out and grab him, and I pat him all down and take him up to the vehicle. And I might have even handcuffed him. Nobody was handcuffing aliens in El Paso in those days, unless there was, you got in a fight with them or something.
Yeah.
But I put him in the vehicle. He takes us over to processing at the Santa Fe Bridge, and I process the guy, and he looks over my paperwork and signs off on it. And he goes, "You happy now?" I caught my one.
Well, this was back in the day when we had 6 and yearly PWPs.
Yeah.
You can get on the spot C&Es, right?
Yep.
C&Es, certification evaluation forms, I think is what it was, and
yep.
And you had to have a certain amount of paperwork to be considered successful, right? To pass those PWPs. Well,
here's the thing. In El Paso, as a 5 on your PWP, you were going to get fully successful unless they didn't like you, and then they would try to board you out on your 6 and 10.
Right.
But the C&Es were up to the agent you were working with, so you had to try to get along real well with whoever your journeyman was.
Mm-hmm.
And they did your C&Es, and there weren't any quotas or anything in El Paso. It was all pretty much, how well do you get along, what they thought of you in general. And it was kind of more of a popularity contest than anything else. So if they liked you, you got a good C&E, and you couldn't expect anything more than a fully successful on your first PWP.
Right.
It took it took a good year or two before they started really looking at you because it takes a while to learn and to be really truly on your own. After we passed our 10-month test, we were on our own.
Yeah.
They really kind of considered us journeymen after the 10, and they threw you a set of keys at the end of muster and said, go, and we were all working solo back then.
Yeah. Yeah. And so what did in particular, right? Every PA has what they like to do, their specialty. Some people like to cut signs. Some guys like to go and sniff dope on the freeways. What did you like to do? What did you get into that was your specialty?
Well, the very number one thing that I like to do is when I got on horse patrol, there was nothing better than that. I never left horse patrol, but it was only a 1-year rotation. So that was the most fun I ever had, the thing I liked the most. But after that, I did like to catch dope. I wasn't the greatest at it. There were guys that were it just seemed like that was their thing. But, I caught some. But my reputation was more of I was kind of a shit magnet. I found a lot of criminals. I would stumble on whatever, but I would find criminals, and I would, I'd get smuggling cases, anything that had to do with nothing, with some paperwork, seizing vehicles, anything like that. I kind of gravitated towards that kind of stuff instead of just processing people for VRs,
Yes.
Some guys were great at just numbers. They'd catch 75 or 100 a day, process them all, and they did that same thing every single day.
Mm-hmm.
But what I liked about it, the job, and we had so many activities. We had foot patrol, Horse Patrol, quad runners, trans check. We had the airport. Sometimes you got to work checkpoints. There was some limited sign cutting, but El Paso was so close to the city that if you didn't get on them within a half an hour, they were gone.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it was a different kind of sign cutting. And down in South Texas, sometimes they can be on a trail for 3 or 4 days.
Yep.
We never got to do any of that. So I probably would have loved that too. But I didn't like, and that's what the beauty of it was, is I didn't like getting into a routine. I like things to be different every day.
Mm-hmm.
And that was a nice thing about, catching aliens, is at the end of the shift, you were done. There was no work that was waiting for you the next day that you didn't finish. I mean, you caught them, you cleaned them, all your mess was cleaned up, and off you went,
Yep.
And then the next day you start over again. And I just like the variety of the things you could do. And it was really, I mean, if you were bored, that was your fault.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's absolutely true. You could be as busy or as non-busy as you wanted to be.
I also like working the airport because there was a lot of smuggling cases. There was a lot of dope out there. And sometimes there was even, if you got to work with the El Paso PD and our special unit, they were also seizing a lot of money going south. So there was everything you could imagine as far as cases went out at the airport. And I made a lot of cases, got a lot of Cat 1 cases, and really kind of looked for the more sophisticated type stuff,
Yeah.
I mean, it was easy. It was like shooting fish in a barrel, seeing a bunch of aliens walking in single file.
Right.
Cuts and clothes from Kmart. They were easy. But if you wanted to catch the actual smuggling loads, you had to kind of be sneaky, because they all knew who we were.
Yes, absolutely.
Even though we were plain clothes, I mean, we stuck out. People would walk up and go, "Oh, you're Border Patrol, aren't you?"
Yeah, no, absolutely. Now, I don't know. I've asked quite a few people this question, and a lot of us, including myself, really didn't pay attention. Were you aware of what was going on around you politically and, in the news and things like that about the patrol and things like that? Were you aware of that stuff that was going on? And if so, what was happening in your time?
Yeah, actually, I got interviewed several times by news media, and they never told me don't do that again. So I guess I did okay. But
okay,
there was a lot of, I mean, El Paso was second to San Diego for smuggling and apprehensions, and there was a lot of stuff going on that I was aware of. I mean, I remember I thought that I'd found this new thing, and I saw that it was called Casa Anunciacion,
mm-hmm.
and it was sanctioned by the Catholic Church, and they had this complex right down real close to the border, and there was a lot of smuggling of El Salvadorians and Hondurans, a lot of OTMs, and it was organized smuggling. And so I started taking pictures. I started compiling all this evidence, the loads. I would interview people. They would show me around. They would show me where the stash houses were. And I made this big intelligence report. And the assistant chief called me in, and he goes, "Yeah, we've known about this for years." Oh, well, I thought I found this new big smuggling operation that you guys weren't aware of, And he's like, no. He goes, "We don't mess with the churches. Just don't worry about it." But he says probably best thing to do is stay away from that area.
Yeah, and that was kind of conventional wisdom at the time, right? What did they tell us at the academy? Don't F with the Indians.
Yeah,
right? And don't mess with the churches.
The churches, stay out of the churches. Don't go chasing aliens in the churches and all that stuff. So yeah, so we did. It was sage advice, but it was kind of disheartening because, I knew that this was organized smuggling, and it really wasn't the church that was doing it. They had lay people, and these people were making money.
Oh yes,
it was an industry for them, and it wasn't really supporting the church. I think they were probably using church resources, but they were lining their own pockets.
Oh, no, that's absolutely right. And even now, I don't even call them NGOs. I call them NGO cartels, because it's a $1 billion business, especially in the last 2 years, you know? So, okay. So did you spend your entire career in El Paso, or where did you move on to from there? Did you promote? What happened next?
Well, I got a couple of details to the academy, and I knew that's really what I wanted to do. I felt like training was really key for, getting people to a good start in the career. And so after, it was actually 10 years to the day. So I went to El Paso, Texas, July 6, 1986, and I left July 6, 1996. So it was like a prison term, man. So I got selected for Charleston when they opened up the Charleston Academy.
Mm-hmm.
It was between Arkansas and South Carolina, and Clinton was in Arkansas, and Fritz Hollings at the time was a U.S. senator, and he was in charge of appropriations. He was the chairman for Senate Appropriations for Justice, and back then we were under Justice, so he had control of all the purse strings. So Clinton said, "Oh, I want this to go to Arkansas," and Hollings said, "Fine, but the money's going to Charleston." Charleston had a closed Navy base that he wanted to get revitalized, and Arkansas, I can't remember the name of the town. It's where they did the 226. That was 10 classes at once. I don't know if you remember that big push. Well, it was the same Anniston Air Force Base. That's what it was.
Wasn't it called the Arkansas 500 or something like that?
Yeah, something like that. Yeah, and so they announced for both places, and I made applications and made the list in both, and eventually I was selected for driver training for Charleston.
Yeah,
and I didn't let the ground cool under my feet. As soon as I left, as soon as I could leave, I did.
Okay.
So I got to Charleston in the middle of a pay period, which was not normal.
Right.
You don't leave in the middle of a pay period and EOD in the middle of a pay period. But I beat all the other driver guys by a couple of weeks, like 2 or 3 weeks, and so they put me in charge of all the construction for the high speed range, the Nevo, skid pan 4x4. So since I was the first one there, I was in charge of the vehicle fleet, stuff I'd never done. So I had to hit the ground running. It was 12 and 14-hour days, and luckily it was only 5 days a week.
Yeah,
because we did get weekends off, but it was a great learning experience. And then I did that for a couple of years, and I had a friend of mine that was the chief in Blaine sector, and he came out he was the keynote speaker at a graduation, and he told me, "You need to put in for the 11s in Blaine sector." He goes, "You need to come out there. It's a great place to raise a family." And at the time, the academy was losing people left and right because we were a 3-year term, and it wasn't permanent. Although we got promoted, and the promotion stays on your record, so you make 12. Now you can put in for 13s after a year. So I was at the academy for 2 years, got my time in as a 12, busted back to an 11. I was in Bellingham Station, and we just did jail check and prosecutions. I was working with a guy. So there were several guys, but Joey Jovanovich took me under his wing and taught me the rules. And next thing you know, I was prosecuting criminal aliens and learning a lot. In El Paso, to touch an A file, you had to be blessed by the Pope. In Blaine sector, you were carrying A files around in your briefcase and issuing A files to new criminal aliens that you encountered in the jails. I mean, it was, and then you'd go to the INS in Seattle and walk around, and they had A files just scattered everywhere that were really not even. I mean, I could have picked up A files and walked out of the building with them. Nobody would ever know. Yeah. The security was insane. In El Paso, all the A files were locked up in a safe, and you could look at them, but you couldn't touch them.
Yeah. I remember we used to have to get Soups to get the A file, log them in, and then hand them over to us, and they were watched very closely.
Oh yeah. And I'll tell you another thing. Our paperwork was superior to everybody in the patrol, including the criminal investigators, unless they were former Border Patrol. But you could, we would have to type everything. There couldn't be any errors. Remember how it was?
Oh, heck yeah.
And then once the computers came along, it helped a lot. But man, I saw reports and stuff that looked like they were written in crayon from CIs. I was like, golly, we work circles around those guys. Yeah,
absolutely. You were going to say?
No, it was great to I really think anybody in immigration, no matter what their role, should have to go through the Border Patrol first.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And that's why they always told us, right? This is a great doorway job because once you become a border patrol agent, all these other agencies will take you literally sight unseen. I mean, you don't even have to go a lot of times you don't even have to go to their academies because they know we have that background training and the field experience to boot, which I think really does help when you are dealing in any aspect of this whole immigration process, which is, at this point now, it's such a nightmare out there. But let me ask you, so you went to Blaine, and then you're doing these prosecutions. Is there any stories in particular that you really like to tell? Like sitting with the guys at the bar, maybe over a shot of Boone's or something like that. Stories you really like to tell about your career in the patrol.
My favorite story is about a guy in El Paso. His name was Juan Gutierrez, and we called him Johnny G. And he was a big, heavy-set guy, real jovial, super nice guy. And he grew up in Segundo Barrio in El Paso, and he was a super personality. We used to play softball together and everything. And so I'm working with him. I didn't get to work with him a lot, but I got assigned to him one day, and he says to me, and he used to call me Mickey D, like McDonald's. Like, I don't know why. He was the only one that did, but that's what he always called me. He said, Mickey D, I want to give you a piece of free advice. I'm going to tell you this, you need to listen. If they show you a piece of paper, let them go. But if you don't, the next thing you know, you're going to have a can of worms. You get a can of worms, I ain't going to help you. And I'll tell you, about a week later, I'm in Paso del Norte processing, and I got papers scattered all over. I got an alien in there, and it's just like helter skelter.
Yeah.
And he goes, "What did I tell you with it? What did I tell you, man? You got a can of worms with it." But see, that's like I told you, I gravitated toward that stuff. That stuff what interested me, and I wanted to get intel. I wanted to find out what was going on, and you don't do that just processing and VRing people. You don't learn much.
No, that is true. That is a very limited point. And like I was saying earlier, even in my career, I had my nose to the grindstone, my laser focused on the job. I honestly didn't pay much attention to the politics until I retired. Right now that I'm retired and I'm in the situation I'm in, where I've kind of been guided into a place where I'm speaking daily about the border crisis, talking to people daily, trying to make sure everybody understands, is aware of it, and doesn't brush it off or dismiss it out of hand, especially since a lot of the guys in their field are the ones that are reaching out to me saying, you need to get this out. They need to know what's going on. A lot of people are still almost, blatantly ignorant about the reality. And what do you think right now, as far as the way things were when you went through the patrol and throughout the years and even after your retirement, compared to now? What's your thoughts on that?
Well, I'll tell you what really changed is when I got to the academy. I was a field agent, and pretty much we were bosses. We caught people, we took their rights away, we incarcerated them, and we were kind of large and in charge in that respect. And I got to the academy, and we had all kinds of admin people. And my feeling was, if I tell them I need something, they should get it because they're support staff.
Right.
So that was my first bout with politics. And my reputation was that I was a knuckle dragger and like a bull in a china shop. So I had to kind of smooth my rough edges and learn how to kind of do a little bit of politics. On the other hand, there was a lot of political stuff going on with the country, and so there was always lawsuits. They were always doing FOIA requests, and we had to answer all those because they all went back to training. What were these guys trained to do? How were they trained? And eventually we got accreditation, but which helped. And then we could say, okay, here's all our stuff. It's all accredited. This is what we teach. And did we teach this? Yes. Did we teach this? No. And it's all pretty much cut and dry. But that was my first really time of paying attention to politics, just like with Fritz Hollings saying the academy's going to Charleston. I mean, he defied the president of the United States.
Mm-hmm.
He's like, I've been a senator since Lyndon Johnson was president, so you'll be gone and I'll still be senator. Plus, we had Strom Thurmond, who was like 100 years old, was the oldest senator in the country. So we had those two heavy hitters. And so I started learning a little bit more about the politics. But the politics today is just so crushing, because Title 8, Title 18 are completely ignored. I mean, I feel like the whole Constitution is ignored. And, being able to make administrative decisions like the Oval Office is doing and has done in the past is so against the Constitution. And I learned a lot about that at the Academy. I mean, that is the job of the Congress, period.
Yes.
The only thing the president can do is approve a certain amount of refugees. That's it. He has nothing to do with funding. He has nothing to do with interpretation. But these guys are the Congress is allowing the president to usurp their authority. And until the Congress and the Senate step up to the plate and say, that's not your job, we're challenging you, you can't do that, and start sending marching orders to the chiefs and telling them we want these laws enforced again, we're not going to get control. And I mean, we had great control several times. I mean, I remember when we were doing employer sanctions,
yes,
we weren't catching any aliens anymore because they were self-deporting. They couldn't get jobs.
Yeah.
And then we were doing the I-9 inspections and we were finding them in the workplaces. We were fining companies, if they were repeat offenders, and that program was working so well that they abandoned it because they couldn't get enough workers. The unemployment rate was under 3% at one point.
Yeah.
So, and then they've never brought it back.
Right.
I mean, they took it away from Border Patrol. They gave it to the CIs. They didn't give CIs any more. They were already overwhelmed, and they didn't give them any more positions to work employer sanctions. So it just went away.
Yeah. Well, it seems to me that this administration, right, they ran on an open border policy, but they found the perfect tool in Mayorkas, because he took his vast experience in immigration for all these decades, right? And he's I believe brought the immigration system of this country to its knees based on his take on the policies, not the law. The law remains the same, but it's the policy that has changed, that has, I believe, is the one root cause of this entire, illegal immigration process, which they call irregular migration, which isn't even in the law books. It isn't even. It's used by the United Nations and open border advocates to try to decriminalize illegal entry.
They're changing the language to soften it so people don't recognize it as a crime anymore when it's a misdemeanor just to cross the border first time. But the operative word you use there for Mr. Mayorkas is tool.
Yes, I'll say, with a capital TOOL.
My last couple of years was I was in San Diego with USCIS. I was I ran their training operation for their district office, and he was over USCIS, and he got fired because he was illegally issuing visas to Russians.
Yeah.
So he lost his job. They brought him back, and you're right. He had all this experience in how to circumvent the system.
Yeah. He's not stupid and he's not incompetent. That's a mistake.
He knows exactly what he's doing. He knows
yes.
It's all part of the plan.
Agreed. So, and you know me, I could talk about that all day, but let's get back to your, so you, anything else happened significantly before you ended up retiring?
Okay. So Fritz Hollings was going to fund a standalone academy in Charleston.
Okay.
They were going to build a brand new academy on the Naval Weapons Station from the ground up. And we were going to get everything we wanted. We were going to get a PT building with an indoor pool, an indoor track, an indoor sea course. All the offices would be in there. I mean, it was going to be a state-of-the-art, magnificent facility like you've never seen. We were going to have the whole complex was going to be engineered so that we didn't waste time in travel. They could all march to classes. They could get to the firing ranges, driver training, and we could have shuttle buses if we needed them, but it was going to be the quintessential training facility. It was going to be our dream. We were not going to be under the thumb of FLETC anymore. And at the time, the chief of the academy was riding with Hollings, and Hollings told him, I got a blank check. You just nod your head. And he said, no, the academy belongs in GLYNCO, Georgia, where basic should be there. That's the philosophy, is basic training should be, all basic training should be in Georgia. And Hollings said, okay. And then we moved to Artesia, New Mexico, because Hollings and Domenici, Pete Domenici was a senator in New Mexico, and they were both on appropriations now for Homeland Security. So Hollings put into a bill that FLETC would still have Charleston and that they would have to keep it open in perpetuity. Same thing with Artesia, and that throughput, the percent of throughput had to be the same in all three facilities. So if they had overflow, they would even it all out, and all three of the facilities would get pretty much equal training, depending on what their capacities were. So we ended up having to go to Artesia, New Mexico. My sons were going to be seniors in high school, twins. One was the student body president. The other one was student body vice president. I wasn't going to move them to Artesia. Yeah. Artesia has a good football team. So my guys ran track and cross country and soccer and stuff like that. And but they have a good football team in Artesia.
Well,
there was nothing for my sons there.
Yeah. Well, someone might ding me for saying this, but I really do like the chow hall food there at Artesia, at the Artesia Academy. So, but being a jarhead from past years, I enjoy pretty much any chow hall. So,
yeah, we upgraded the chow hall in Charleston, and it was pretty darn good. And I've been to Artesia many times, and the food there's pretty good.
It's not bad. It's not bad. I got to teach a couple of times there.
But you can go to the high school football games. You can go to the high school baseball games. You can't go to a dentist. You got to go out of town to get a good doctor.
Yeah.
There's really nothing there. And when the academy left and went there, I think there's only 13,000 people. There's more than that in my subdivision where I live.
I'll bet.
And then the housing prices like doubled overnight. It was terrible.
Oh yeah. With that influx. Yeah. Absolutely.
I put in for headquarters. I didn't get selected for headquarters, but Charlie Whitmire went to bat for me and got me a job with FLETC so I could stay in Charleston with my family. If I would have gone to DC, I would have been living in a trailer somewhere in a campground.
Yeah.
Commuting home whenever I could. But I was willing to do that and to keep my family together. And that's just what happened. So I worked for FLETC. I went from a 13 to a 12. I lost my AUO, so that was a big financial hit.
Yeah.
Then 2 years later, I saw an announcement in GLYNCO for GS-13 ICE instructors, non-supervisory. It was GS-13 with AUO and FLSA. And it's like you said, your Border Patrol, our training program was second to none. We had the best training program in the world.
Yep.
For enforcement. And Darren Rich and I both put in, and we both got selected. So we moved to GLYNCO, and I would leave GLYNCO on Friday after classes. Drive home, mow the lawn, kick the dog, kiss the wife, yell at the kids, and Sunday afternoon or Sunday evening I'd drive back, and I did that for like 7 months. And I saw another job opening. No one told me about it. I was always curious. I wanted to see what was on the horizon.
Yep.
So, there was an announcement for the chief of advanced training for ICE in Charleston. I put in for that, and I made the list, and I got interviewed, and I was selected because excellent. I knew the director. I knew all the worker bees. I knew all the facilities. I'd been there for like 6 or 8 years. I knew that place like the back of my hand.
Yeah.
And they didn't have anybody. So I got picked. I went from a 12 to a 14 in 7 months.
Nice. Nice.
But I lost FLSA. So I did take a little pay cut, but I was back home. I was happy. Did that for like 6 years. We brought in the 287G program.
Which is?
That's the teaching state and local immigration law so that they can be force multipliers for the Border Patrol.
Okay.
And
okay,
so
good.
we had, at the time, we even had state troopers that we were teaching. They stopped us from doing that because they thought they were pulling over alien loads just because they spotted them.
Yeah.
You know, they didn't think they had the right. I mean, they had the right amount of suspicion. There was never any cases that were lost because they did anything wrong. But the politics, the program was too successful.
Of course.
Again,
of course. The same old story.
Originally, the program was we sent instructors out to, Arizona, California, Texas, wherever they wanted the program. And we didn't have residential training. What they found was that the sheriffs and the police chiefs were making these guys go to work and serve warrants and stuff after training and on weekends, and they weren't getting to study.
Oh.
So we said we need to take them away from that. We need to just take them out of that element completely and do the whole program as a residential training program. So we brought that to Charleston. We had all state-of-the-art classrooms. We had all the newest computers, and we taught them pretty much everything, all the acronyms, how to process, and it was it's still going on. It's not like it should be, but depending on the politics of where it is, they either love us or hate us. You know how that is.
Yes, I do.
And that was one of the big things we did. The other thing, we had some really excellent chiefs over ERO.
Mm-hmm.
And ERO is getting a lot of lawsuits because of constitutional
violations.
So civil rights violations.
Yeah.
They weren't, and the academy previously was not really teaching the law well, but we had this guy, Tony Putnam, that had got his master's in adult education, and he had a plan. And so I worked with him on that a little bit. He had the expertise, but I did have the contacts to completely change the program. So his vision and what we accomplished was that they did pretty much the book training in their own environment. If they were going to be sent to the academy for training for ERO, they had to go through, and it was all online. So they could go and study everything online, all the laws, everything they needed was all like click and touch, and you could get the exact quote you wanted. I mean, it was so streamlined and so beneficial. The average test, I think, was like 95% passed, got 95% on their scores. The scores went right through the roof. They went up like 20 points.
Wow.
Then they were retested when they came to the academy to ensure retention. And then almost all of the training at the academy was like training at the speed of light. It was all scenario-based training.
Yes.
Building entries. They learned how to do, post the proper documents when they went in and took, and we got role players. I mean, it was
really well done.
High speed, low drag. And we all got these, like the best award I ever got. It was like freaking, I mean, I did all kinds of cool things, in my career.
Yeah.
And for training, I got I guess it was the director of Homeland Security. It's like this big, huge thing with a badge in it and telling me how great I am. And I'm like, yeah, this is the guys in the field need to get these kind of awards.
Yeah.
Not these people in training, but it was important and it was breakthrough. And it was really nobody else in federal law enforcement or state and federal law enforcement anywhere had anything like it. And he really knocked it out of the park and made a name for himself.
Well, I do want to emphasize that, Mick, the fact that the Border Patrol has been, sometimes on the cutting edge of when it comes to training, when it comes to academy, when it came to all those kind of things, we were the best in the world. We used to get recruited from across the ocean, right? In all these other countries to go and teach, and still are. And to teach border security, and there's still a lot of guys, retired guys even, still working out there in places that I can't even pronounce the names.
Yeah, I got friends of mine that tried to recruit me for that, and I started the application, but with the bourbon and the beer and stuff, it's just too much. I can't do it all.
You mean drinking it or selling it?
Yeah, both. One goes,
Well,
and in some of those countries you can't. I mean, they're Muslim countries, and you're not supposed to be drinking and all.
mhm.
You can get arrested for that. So probably not the best lifestyle for me, but it did sound very, very intriguing
And it
and
pays,
exciting.
and it's pretty incredible pay, isn't it?
It's great. I mean, just the my favorite thing with going on detail was the per diem, because there's no
Yeah,
tax per diem, and I don't like taxes. I hate taxes.
I agree 100%.
If I can get tax-free money, I'm all over it.
Agreed, agreed. And so when did you retire from the patrol?
So I had actually 18 years and 8 months in the patrol, and I went to FLETC, I went to ICE, and then at just a few months before mandatory, I went to USCIS in San Diego.
How long did you work there?
2 years.
Okay.
I had a heart condition. I had AFib, and I said, "That's it. I'm not doing that. I'm not working." And the other thing was, I had the headquarters go through my pay and everything to tell me how much I would make if I retired.
Yeah.
I was working for $200 a month.
Seriously.
Yeah, after not contributing to TSP and all that other stuff, man, my take home only went down $200 a month when I retired. I'm like,
wow.
I could go do anything and make more than $200 a month and not have to work 40, 50 hours a week to do it.
Yeah, yeah. And so obviously you did, which makes a great segue into the next chapter of your life that I want to talk about, that we want to talk about, and that's Boone's Bourbon.
Yes.
How did that come about?
So I retired in 2014, I think it was, and my son was living in Nashville, and he's a singer-songwriter and guitar player. He plays blues and rock and roll.
Tyler.
And he was trying to get signed. He got an offer by Eddie Chesney's manager,
Kenny Chesney.
Kenny Chesney to play country, and he's like, I'll have to say no to that. I don't do country, man. So he turned that down, and I said, man, that's where the money is. You should have taken it. But he's like, no. He determines his own future. So
yes,
he's out there working all these side jobs, and decides that he wants his own bourbon to go with the blues and rock and roll. And that was in 2015. He got the federal licensing, developed the label, decided on the Tennessee bottle and the cork and all that stuff, and was getting his ducks in a row. And then he had to have eye surgery, and they only did this specific eye surgery in New York and Charleston. So he came back home to Charleston, got the eye surgery, he was recovering, and he walked into a distillery here in Charleston and said, hey, man, this is my idea. This is what I want to do. And will you guys work with me on it? And they were only doing rum, vodka, and gin. They didn't have any bourbon. And they're like, yeah. And they had a whole bottling line, and so they brought us in, brought in a whole bunch of different samples to see what we thought we would want. And they narrowed it down to about 4 or 5. And Tyler brought them home to me and said, I want your opinion, Dad. You're a bourbon drinker. And so I blind tasted them all, and I was like, this one here is like superior by far to all the others. And that's the one we still have today. And he said, we all agreed. He goes, it's 100%. We all like this. It's 117 proof barrel strength.
Oh, yeah.
We're like, we're not proofing it down. We don't want to mess it up because it tastes good the way it is. So we went with it, and that's what we still have to this day. And we do want to expand into maybe some other spirits. I'd like to do it tequila, but I don't know. I'd like to name it Tequila de Patrulleros or something like that.
Oh, something cool like that. That'd be outstanding. Heck, maybe we can talk about a little bit of an Old Patrol tequila.
Yeah, man.
But let me tell you, I had horrible experience with whiskey and bourbon. Okay, and my classmate Tony Holiday, who's I think he retired as a chief out in DC, he once invited me to his house for whiskey and cigars, and he gave me a whiskey glass. I took one taste of it, and then I snuck into the kitchen and tried to put equal inside it to sweeten it up, because I just thought it was, I thought it was horrible. I don't think he's ever forgiven me for that. Right, because that was a blasphemy on some cosmic level. But then in 2021, when we were at the Forbo at Nashville, right?
Yeah,
I get this big old Patrol guy come up to me and say, "You got to try this bourbon." I was like, well, okay, I'll give it a try. So I remember you served me some of it, and I tasted it first before I did end up mixing it in with some 7-Up or something. It was delicious, and man, I'll tell you, that it turned me into an instantaneous bourbon drinker. But nothing but Boone's though. I won't drink any other bourbon.
Good. That's what I like to hear. Yeah, I've heard a lot of people from their favorite bourbon, and now they drink Boone's as their go-to. But yeah, there's you got to be careful, especially when you get into the higher proofs. There's a way to drink it. There's a way to taste it.
Yeah,
and it's kind of an old moonshiner's trick. So you take it in your mouth, you swallow and blow out, then close and taste. Because if you take air in over the top, it's going to evaporate, and you're going to get that nasty feeling, and you're not going to like it. That's probably what happened to you. You probably took a breath when you had that bourbon the first time.
Or the whiskey, yeah.
Yeah, and people say, some people go, oh, you're supposed to drink it neat or over a rock or something. Hey, you drink it the way you like it.
Yeah.
It's like that Louisiana guy that says he does the cooking. He says, put whatever spices you like.
yeah. And I even bought a special bourbon sipping glass.
Yes.
And when certain people, right, because not everybody gets it, come over, I serve it in that little glass, and I went on, and I'll be honest with you, I had to go online to learn, but I went online to learn how to properly taste it and how to properly enjoy it. And I'm telling you what, that is like the smokiest, smoothest. And it's strong. There's no doubt about it. You 117 proof, and it's every last bit, right? But it is truly, Mick, delicious. And I, by the way, also am a very proud investor in this company as well. So
I know that. I appreciate that. I really do.
And I know a lot of guys do. And see, one thing I love, and I'll tell you what I love about it most. It comes with its own history and background and things like that, but I love the Old Patrol connection. And I haven't been doing it lately a long time because honestly, this border crisis has me busy. My wife is so just done with me because she is a border crisis widow right now because I'm doing updates, I'm doing podcasts, I'm talking to journalists all the time, I'm putting out information. So I love putting pictures of you on the horse patrol in uniform and connect that whole connection between Old Patrol. When we put out those bourbon bottles, you were the very first bottle that I sold of that bourbon. It's gorgeous, right? That's a gorgeous bottle, and I'm going to bring him back again. But I love that Old Patrol connection, right? Because it's not just a bourbon for us Border Patrol agents. It's a Old Patrol guy bourbon. It came from an Old Patrol guy who knows our background, knows our history, lived it, experienced it, and now I don't know, I feel like it's infused in the bourbon somehow.
I do too. I feel that way. We do have a thin blue line around the label for law enforcement and first responders. I kind of wish we had a green one around it, but it wouldn't represent all of law enforcement.
The entirety of it, yes, the entirety of it, of course. And I think that we deserve to be lumped in together as brothers and sisters in law enforcement because we all, in the last couple of years, and even during, unfortunately, the term before Trump, law enforcement was raked through the coals then, and we're being raked through the coals now. We got a few moments left. I want to do a couple of things. Okay. One, I would like you to mention a few names of PAs, right? We all got our compas. We all got those go-to guys who made the career for us, and we miss them desperately, or we still hang out with them, but they're those certain guys. Is there a certain number of guys that you shout out right now that really made an impact for you in the Border Patrol?
Yeah, we had a supervisor in El Paso named John Tilty. Mm-hmm. He was like everybody's hero. He was like a human computer. And that's kind of the reason why I hold him in such high esteem, is because he was like the king of the shit magnets. He knew all the bad people. I mean, he ran. A lot of times he was running the we called it anyway. It was the criminal alien program. We did all the jail check and all that kind of stuff, and you would come up with something, and he would have a 213 on the same guy from 6 years ago going, well, here's his real name. So
Mm.
you can redo the paperwork and get them processed, and we'll get them prosecuted and all that kind of stuff. He was a very and very he had your back too.
Yeah.
It wasn't just that he was a good leader and very knowledgeable, but he would have your back.
We remember those most, don't we?
Yeah, we had another guy named Ray Powers. He was in charge of the horse patrol, and he was a good influence. Just an old cowboy, you know, taught us a lot, and you know, certain things with him. I'm trying to think of other guys that were got several other guys that were instructors like Riley Handbeck and Steve Roebuck that were such good guys in the classroom. I used to go watch them and try to pick up tips from them.
Another question I want to ask you is, we're going to celebrate the 100-year anniversary of the United States Border Patrol next year.
Yeah.
And and unfortunately, Mick, we're going to celebrate it in literally the most wide open border security breach, the most from all time numbers, literally by the numbers, all type historic high illegal immigration released, paroled into the country by the millions, not to mention how many gotaways. We're about to celebrate our beloved patrol centennial in the midst of this horrific nightmare. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, you mentioned something before, you know, and it brings me back to it when you said this, and that's that we need to get the word out somehow. You know, not just that, hey, we're celebrating 100 years, but the crisis. Half the people in the country don't even know.
Yeah,
they haven't even seen a video clip of all these people coming in. They're totally oblivious to it, and I think that's the reason why we didn't take more Senate seats and more congressional seats in the last election, is because people didn't vote that way because they didn't know.
Yeah.
We have to get this message out, and people need to be informed on how bad this is and how it's going to impact their lives and the lives of their children, because this is a storm that hasn't even hit us yet. I mean, it's just starting to bubble up, and when it blows up, it's going to blow up big.
Yeah.
You're seeing it in some of the bigger cities, but not to the degree that the southern border has seen it.
No. They're complaining about a few numbers when the border cities and towns and all the sectors along the southern border have been literally underwater for 936 days of this disgusting administration. They have been underwater, completely overwhelmed, every resource overwhelmed. And now New York and Massachusetts and freaking Martha's Vineyard get just a sampling of it, and they're screaming bloody murder.
Well, what's amazing on that order is they've spent so much money to try to house these illegal aliens. They're not migrants.
No, they're not freaking migrants. They're illegal aliens. Yes, not irregular immigration. Illegal.
So they're trying to. I mean, they're throwing good money after bad. So, you know, an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. They're spending billions of dollars to give these people whatever they're not giving our own military people, our veterans. They're not giving our own homeless people.
Yeah.
Look at all the. I mean, I don't know how many it was, but all those people in Lahaina, a lot of those people were homeless.
Yeah.
That died needlessly, and we're not protecting our own, and we're spending billions of dollars, and what we need to spend that money on is security and enforcement. You know, we could end this. We could fix this.
Oh, yes. If you say the word, the Border Patrol and every dedicated man and woman that works DHS CBP that does take their oath seriously, that does believe in the security of this country, could close down the border in a week, Mick. You and I know that. And we
could send these folks back to their home countries that are here too.
Well, that's just it. We're
building too many. It's not too many.
No, yeah, because we're literally as we speak building infrastructure to support this amount of illegal immigration for decades to come if they have their way.
Yeah, there's more now that have come in the last 2 years, then
Yes.
what is it, 17 or 18 states?
I'm telling you, by the numbers alone, there have been more people entered and processed and released in the entire history of this country. Okay, and that record has been beat a few times over just in the last 2 years. And I'm not even going to get started on the gotaways, on the terrorist entries, on the fentanyl, on the child and human smuggling and trafficking. We're not even talking those numbers. But Mick, I really appreciate your time today, talking about your background and your history. It's stuff that this is going to go across the Border Patrol. So, as our final closing moment, is there anything you'd like to say to the dedicated men and women that are out there that still believe in enforcing immigration law and securing our country, not only for their kids, but for everybody else's kids in America?
There will be an end to this. It's going to get turned around. I know it's very, very disheartening, but you just got to keep the faith. Always believe in our motto, honor first, and do your best. I always told guys if they came in on detail and I was their supervisor, I always told them, man, you need to become a leader, because if you don't become a leader, we're not going to get the change. You can't stand on the sidelines. I'm telling you, don't be a journeyman forever. Look forward, become a leader, make a difference, and we can all make a difference.
Amen to that. That sounds good advice then, and it's good advice now. Well, God bless you. Thank you so much again, Mick, for your time. And this is pure Old Patrol gold, and I can't wait to put it out for everybody to listen to it. And again, just want to say Boone's Bourbon has been declared, I think, in the top 5 bourbons in the world by Forbes and other agencies. And so I highly recommend Boone's Bourbon, along with the Boone's Bourbon beer that's been put out there, that if somebody decided to send me a free sample, I probably wouldn't throw it away.
Okay.
I'm not necessarily talking to you, okay?
Okay, that'd be great if somebody bought it retail and sold it or sent it to you. But yeah, I'll look you up. We have the beer now, and now we're working on a cigar.
Excellent.
A bourbon infused cigar. So that's coming around the corner too. So you can enjoy the cigar and the bourbon together. And right now the beer is only in South Carolina, but we do have our eyes on expanding.
Well, I want to tell my classmate Tony Holiday that the next time I have a cigar and a bourbon in my hand, I'm actually going to know what to do with them. Thank you, Mick.
All right. Thank you. Appreciate it.
All right. Thank you for listening to the Old Patrol HQ podcast. For more, follow me at Old Patrol HQ on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter, and visit my website at oldpatrolhq.bigcartel.com. Honor first, honor always.